What's up, star people? Welcome back to Star Quality. We are going to be talking about Charli XCX today and Lorde and the astrology of being chronically online. I'm a Charli fan, so Brat just came out on June 7th. Been listening to it quite nonstop. I am an angel, and there's one song on the album called Girl So Confusing, and I wanted to talk about that song in particular because it's created a bit of buzz. It's been a little controversial. Like, it's not really controversial, but it's more it's a news item. So it's been a little news item that this is about another pop starlet, and there are some clues from the song lyrics, which we'll go over in a bit, but folks are very convinced that it is Lorde. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to go over the astrology of both Charli's chart and Lorde, Leo and Scorpio, and then we'll get into their shared similarities and their differences, and just why these two as artists have been compared. But what made me really want to make this episode was more of the theme of being chronically online. I think in this repercolated feud that they don't really have, and we'll get into it because this song is famously not a diss track, even though people are saying it is. It's more of a track that is about wanting friendship with someone who you're just not compatible with, or especially more in the circumstance for Charli, with wanting to get along with a musical peer who you're often compared to and who you have some jealousy of, but you just don't have that closeness that maybe you wish you had. I think Charli and Lorde are both very talented at making songs that are really about universal feelings that I haven't heard anyone sing or talk about yet. And I think Charli really nails it with the themes of friendships, especially female friendships, where you should get along with a person. They look great on paper, you have all these interests and you do the same things, but then you get together over dinner or at a party and you're like, I'm just not compatible with you. I think friendship dating is like dating. And if there's just not the sparks, there's just not that natural ease, that's information, even if you have everything correct on paper. I had that a lot. When I first moved to LA, I was getting set up on friendship dates. People I knew through other people, or if I met someone cool, you get your info, because I was looking for friends in a new city. And there's definitely moments I've had this feeling that Charli just sums up where it's like, I should like you, right? We even astrologically maybe match. So we astrologically make sense. But having it all be right doesn't mean it is exciting or feels good, or, for me in my astrology, I don't want someone who's just like me. I'm go crazy. So I think, I just love that this song in particular. And I'll go over a few of my other favorite songs from Brat as well. We'll talk a bit about Brat, but so I think what perked up for me and what interests me in chatting about Charli and Lorde related to this song is the key difference between these two, even though they have a lot of differences and they often get compared, but the really big difference, both personality wise and musically related, is that Charli has always been a very chronically online person, while Lorde has been more recently, was online, but is now been for years very offline and private. So I wanted to look and see if we can find some hallmark, trademark, points of the chart and speculate on what planetary placements or aspects might lend to being more online and more visible and more open to sharing with strangers and a wider audience, versus a chart that might indicate more privacy and working behind the scenes and not wanting to show the process as much. So, I think even if you are a more internal person who doesn't like to be online as much, it doesn't mean we're never going to use the internet. You're here now. So odds are you are using the internet, unless this is like put on some tape that is put into then a vault for future aliens, and they're watching this on an old VHS, because they're actually in the future, they use vintage technology because they're hip like that. Shout out to the aliens. But I'm assuming you're here either on YouTube or on my Substack, or you're listening the audio on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, which is a great reminder that this is a video episode. So if you are listening on audio, all good. Just know that there is a video option if you want to see the visuals, like the natal charts being shared or any photos or anything like that, or if you want to see my face. So you can listen and engage any way you like. So the first chunk, we're going to get into Girl So Confusing and why we're even talking about this in the first place. So we're going to look at Charli's chart, we're going to look at Lorde's chart, and then we're going to get into their synastry chart and see where those connections do and do not lie. So if you're listening, this first half is going to be free for anyone, anywhere. And then if you want to keep listening, there will be at the second half that will be paywalled for supporters and subscribers of Star Quality. So enjoy this first half if you're a freebie. Thank you for your support. Tell your friends, subscribe on my Substack. And if you are a supporter, lucky you get to listen to the rest of the episode. And if you're like, wait, I want to become a supporter, how do I do that? Go to my Substack. This will be in the show notes of whatever you're listening to. It is starquality.substack.com. And yes, if you've been here since the beginning, I started as Stevie's Email Energy. It's been Stevie's Email Energy up until this episode with Star Quality as the podcast. Maybe long story short, I'm condensing it all down because when I first started my Substack years ago, it was just writing, and now it's become a one-stop universe for also writing, but audio and video and art sharing and whatever, this medium will provide. So it is now just Star Quality. I'm feeling very like Justin Timberlake's character in The Social Network when they're talking about Facebook and the name of Facebook, and Jesse Eisenberg's like, the Facebook, and Justin Timberlake's leaving their Silicon Valley schmoozy dinner. He's like, just Facebook. No, it's much cleaner. So that's me. That's me now. So welcome to full blown Star Quality in all these spots. And if you want to follow me on any other platforms, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, that's all in the notes, but I am at spaghetti_witch on those platforms. So thank you. And what do subscribers get, you ask? If you join my third space, which is where all my subscribers live, that is going to get you all these paywalled episodes, writings, which can be, about planetary ingresses. We have a lot of stuff coming up in the coming week. And also your weekly written forecast, which gives you a day-by-day breakdown of, the pros, the cons, and how to tackle the week. And then also, if you go to a founding member level, you will get a free 15-minute complimentary video call reading, one question reading, and we'll talk about whatever astrological question you have. And then also you get discounts on my natal chart reading. So it's a steal of a deal. You help support me. Basically, you're buying me a cup of coffee every month. So if you enjoy my work, please buy me an iced latte, and I will be forever grateful to channel the stars for you. So let's get into Girl So Confusing and why we're talking about Charli XCX and Lorde together. So there's a really comprehensive article on Vulture, co-written by one of my friends. Shout out to Alejandra Gularte, and it was co-written with her and Jason P. Frank. And this is on Vulture. I'll link it in the notes, but the article name is "Which Pop Girl is Girl So Confusing About?" So this is just a real straightforward breakdown of why most likely this is going to be Lorde. There's a YouTube link to the Charli song as well and what the lyrics are saying. So I'm going to read a bit of like the key lyrics that they pull quoted, but also, that I would have pull quoted myself to reference this. So shout out to this really comprehensive article. It summarizes all the main points that you've seen floating around the internet into one nice, concise space. The first lyrics that they have here, which is why we're thinking is Lorde, is I'm like going to try to like talk sing it in the tone of the song, which is obviously a very great homage to like Uffy. And of course, Charli's worked with Uffy. Just like a really good indie sleaze talk track. But people say we're alike, that we've got the same hair. So unless Charli is really trying to throw us off the track, because some people are saying maybe it's Taylor, maybe it's Taylor Swift, maybe it's Marina from Marina and the Diamonds, maybe it's Rena because they had a fallout. So, yeah, maybe it's Camila Cabello because they've been having recent, is Camila swagger jacking Charli? God, now I'm like, is it Katy Perry? But I do think it is Lorde, because I think the next set of lyrics really cement that. But, people say we're like that we got the same hair. Charli and Lorde have been compared to looking like, which is funny because I don't think they do. Like, of course, like if you sit back and see them maybe a street away, I'd be like, sure. But like, I don't think they look that alike. But we'll get into the rising signs because I think this plays a really big part also into this comparison that they've constantly been experiencing. And then the next chunk of lyrics that really point us towards Lorde is, you're all about writing poems, but I'm about throwing parties. Think you should come to my party and put your hands up. So we all famously know that Lorde has a very, as it says in the Zorgal, has a very famous song where she sings, I'm kind of over getting told to throw my hands up in the air. So there. And that Lorde is famously more like a poetry. She'd written poetry before. I'm like a little bit skim reading this article, but the hands up, come to this party and throw my hands up. I'm getting tired of being told to throw my hands up in the air. It's like, come on. If it's a coincidence, come on. Charli knows what she's doing. But, so Charli's been interviewed on Las Culturistas saying, she was thinking of maybe revealing it and saying who it was or is. And she is not for now and is not going to do that. And this song has been getting wrapped up as this like diss track, but I think, and what this article also, touches on is that this isn't a diss track. And Charli's been saying it's not a diss track. I think if you listen to it, like it does really, like, there's never any shit talking. It's just pointing out differences in someone else. And I think, I speculate, especially because Lorde, again, who's been famously offline, she hasn't posted on social in a long time. She posted that she pre-saved the Brat album, and then she was at the Brat show in New York and, posted a little like paparazzi, e-girl selfie in the back of a car that said, "Hey, Brat." It's like the most she's posted in years, and it's all about Brat. So I think my thought, and I think a lot of people probably might agree, is that I think Charli wrote this about Lorde, but like they talked about, I don't think it's like a surprise that she wrote about Lorde. I think it was like, hey, I wanted to write this song about some complicated feelings I have, and here it is. And it's, yeah, I don't know. I think since Lorde, is like this wild Scorpio, I think, I don't think that'd be too odd or off. And I think it's just really real. And it really is an invitation for these two who, yeah, can kind of like, it's the maximize the joint slay. It's like, this doesn't feel like a rip on either or like going low. It's just this acceptance and verbalizing of when you just don't feel aligned with another. Now there's a like famous interview online of like this interviewer asking Charli about like writing royals, mistaking her for Lorde. It has been pretty cemented that that's like a parody interview, but we already have some like in-depth past history that Charli's been compared to Lorde and mixed up with Lorde. And there's also a quote in this article here that I thought was really interesting about her jealousy for Lorde. Yeah, she was quoted in Rolling Stone UK in May, just this past May. You piece all this stuff together that she was like, this quote is that she was jealous when Royals came out, super jealous of the success that Lorde had from, Royals worldwide smash. And this is also the quote from Charli. You piece all this stuff together in your brain. Like, she was into my music. She had big hair. I had big hair. She wore black lipstick. I wore black lipstick. You create these parallels and think, well, that could have been me, but it couldn't because we're completely different people. And I mean, it's interesting, right? When we think also about the difference between admiration, paying tribute, and then like swagger jacking. Haven't we all had, I started posting my stories like this, and now this person does this now, or like those little mirrorings. But then also there's probably someone thinking that same thing about us, and we're all just constantly borrowing and being influenced by culture. But I think it's interesting to think about also Charli's jealousy kind of being a little more on display than what we've heard from Lorde, but also we don't hear that much from Lorde. So maybe there is some jealousy, but we're just not seeing it as visibly as Charli, and Charli is often singing more about that. So as for now, Girl So Confusing, most likely about Lorde. Lorde has been at Charli things, so clearly no bad blood, or Lorde is just super down for the PR. And if she does hate her, she's like, fuck it. But I think these two, I don't know. I think this is also maybe like a beautiful way to connect with someone you don't really connect with, is like by doing this like kind of art project with them, even if it's more like a social art project. So who knows? Maybe this will be some budding new special side thing that comes that isn't just this straightforward like friendship or collaborator. It's like something totally different than all that. Okay, let me just get into a few of the songs that I love from the Brat album. Same thing. Now I'm thinking like, oh, it's star quality, but it's the same thing as Stevie's emoji, but it's now just star quality, so it's not. That's going to be I'm going to make the art for that, but that's the name. So Brat is the album, and then there's the bonus 3 tracks that came out, I think a few days later, that's called Brat, and it's the same thing, but there's 3 more songs, so it's not. So Girl So Confused, I love the whole album. I think the second half really like pounds it home for me, where I'm just like, it's like constant, ooh, this is my fave song. Ooh, this is my fave song. But standouts for me, Girl So Confusing. I just love the style and message of the song. And then I think about it all the time. Kind of postal servicey, you know? I'm sure there's other references in there that I'm not 100% getting. Also, that's a good reminder too, is I am not a Charli XCX nor Lorde expert. I'm a fan of both. Slightly bigger fan of Charli, just I'm more familiar with Charli. So yeah, if you have any corrections or insights or things to share with the class, please share your Charli XCX and Lorde knowledge in the comments. Also, same thing for anything astrology. If you see something in their chart that I don't see, or if there's something that jumps out to you, please let me know. I mean, a chart's huge, so it's rare I'll get every single little minutia, but we'll get the major blocks of their charts and what is their similarities and their differences. But I love Girl So Confusing. I think about it all the time. I love all the 3 bonus tracks too. Hello Goodbye and Guess. Guess I think is so far my favorite. It's just so horny and weird, and put underwear in your mouth. It's just like kind of like a Benny Benassi banger. So I'm really into it. I'm going to see Charli this fall. Last time I saw Charli was on the Crash tour, and I truly crashed. I fell down 3 rows of concert seats at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles. So if anyone has video of that, I've been asking now for years, please send that to me because I would love to see. It probably looked very funny. So I've never seen Lorde. I haven't seen Lorde. I decently enjoyed Solar Power. I think that was her last album. I'll double check that. But I decently enjoyed Solar Power. Some parts could be a little snoozy, but overall solid. I mean, they're both like, I was about to go, wickedly talented. Adele, who are they? Adele Dazeem. So let's get into Charli's chart first and just kind of get a general consensus on her chart, her vibe, and where we might be seeing elements of her natal chart really shining out in her public pop star life. Also, for both Charli and Lorde's chart, I got their birth data from Astro Databank. Astro Databank is a fairly reliable resource. Sometimes with celebrities, we often don't have their rising sign because we don't have their birth time. Sometimes the birth time could be, the source can be questionable. So Astro Databank is fairly awesome for like cross-checking, making sure that it's like, a recognized source and listing the source and all that. So I'm pulling that from Astro Databank. If you know a more accurate source for their birth times, please update Astro Databank. And I think this is a great reminder too, if you ever hear someone's, a celebrity or a person of note's birth time mentioned anywhere in a book, in an interview, update the databanks, email them and let them know. I did that once. I can't remember if I shared this already or not, but I did that once for Eric Andre. He shared it on an interview. So I emailed one of them. I was like, here's a source to his birth time, and was credited as a contributor. And I thought, wow. Because we are using these, for research and historic records, and then especially why, I get why we talk about celebrities in general and pop culture because, we have since the dawn of time, but it's extra special, I think, for astrology because we can really use these public folks for research, right? Like seeing if these line up with Venus return behavior, see if these line up with Saturn square Saturn behavior, things that can happen. So it helps with these events. Same thing, like the astrology of events that happens. We can look, of course, look at a person's birth chart, but we can also look at the chart of an event. So yeah, that's where I'm getting these charts. I put them into my own software so I can click around a little more easier. So let's look at Charli XCX's chart. I can't believe this is the first time I'm doing British accent. Sorry, everyone. I won't do a New Zealand one, I promise. But yeah, let's look at Charli's chart. Okay, we have here Charli's chart. And then I also have in the tab over Lords because I think we might want to pop over to Lords after we first recap Charli. So let's get into Charli's chart for a second. Love a Leo queen. And I think this is so interesting that she has this Leo stellium in the third house. So if you know anything about Charli XCX, she loves singing about cars and kind of bopping around the neighborhood. And it's really like local, clubby, all that. And the third house is definitely this more neighborhood community space. So it's just like such a loud translation of that in terms of astrology of like, oh, like you literally sing about like cars and crashing and all that stuff. Does this album have as much car stuff? Well, there's the airport song. Anyways, I'll have to double check how much car stuff is in it. But the third house is where we really find things about cars. So just quite literal Barbie speed drive, all that. Vroom vroom, Charli loves a car reference. So yes, let's just talk about the big three. So we have a Leo sun conjunct here with Mercury and Chiron, and Mercury retrograde should point out as well. So if you see this in red, that's going to indicate retrograde. And then Virgo moon, and then Cancer rising. So that is going to make the ruler of Charli's chart this Virgo moon here in the fourth house of home and security and a more internal world. So I think the first thing in terms of being chronically online, right, that is I kind of love it about Charli's chart, and I think can be the interesting conversation in astrology of like when we have planets in certain houses and this idea that maybe these planets are here to do the mission of that house or be really loud in the themes of that house. Like, yeah, we might obviously like really go there. But when we have the opposite and we have, Charli has a very, it's interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, we have some planets above the horizon. So, Charli is a night chart. So this line right here where we find the ascendant and then the descendant, this marks the horizon line. So these are the planets that are out in the visible sky. Now there's some things we'll never see like Neptune and Uranus, they're too far away, but Saturn, Mars here were out in the visible sky. Well, everything else was below the horizon, more in the internal world. So we have, the sun, that makes sense because it was 2:25 a.m. So that's in the night, and also Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, the moon, Pluto. Again, we are not going to see that. And then these two symbols are our north node and south node, and those aren't planetary points. They're hypothetical points in the sky that we look for with our eclipses. So oftentimes when we're thinking about onlineness, we go to the 11th house because it's often where we're going to tie in themes of technology and sharing wider group networks. There's other places we can kind of get clues to internet-y things, but oftentimes we're going to find it in an 11th house space. And also, yes, in these more like connector sort of zones. So what I love is that Charli, who was born with this night chart, who has really strong Venus and Leo too, who has like this urge to share, right, herself, like the messenger with Mercury is here and it's really strong, but it is retrograde. So there is also this like um, distortion of self too, right? Like Charli sings a lot about her insecurities, which is what we don't really expect from a Leo, right? Leo is typically supposed to be really proud and out there and like, but then also Chiron is tied to Venus. So then there's like this pain that we can find, right? And especially Leo Chiron people, often maybe when they were younger, maybe they were told they were too much or told to tame it down or not like speak too loudly or like draw attention to yourself. So this could really be, some rectification for some pain, and maybe some pain that was like very early in life. Now, on the flip side, who would maybe criticize themselves or have a more critical, judgmental eye would be a stereotype of Virgo energy, right? So, that could be the influence there. But I do think that this Leoness isn't just this like, oh, she should be so bold and like confident in this and whatever. And I think this can also lend to feeling like an odd person out sometimes too, when there's like this Leo with a twist, this Leo with a twist of vulnerability, this Leo with a twist of self observation and discovery and all of that. And two, it's not in the first, I use Placidus, but even if it was whole sign, it would still be in the 12th. There is this, close conjunction, even though different sign, but at a critical degree, intense degree of Gemini, the last degree of Gemini. And we have the south node of, a release of self too, that's really present in there. And also too, as a moon ruled person, that those feelings of, one day you're feeling really hot, one day you're feeling really not, like it's so lunar because the moon is so quick and it's so changing. And I think my advice for people dealing with lunar people is you're not meeting the same person every day. I think Gemini always gets that rap, right, of like they're two-faced, one day they're this, one day they're that. But I think Cancers and lunar people, or wherever you're finding that lunar part of your chart, is where we're going to actually see a lot more of the shifting and changing, because it's just moon things. Because maybe one day the moon's in Aries and you really want to go and do a lot of things and like do something adventurous and outdoors. And then maybe the next day the moon's in Pisces and you really want to slow it down. So I think lunar people, it's a good note that keep in touch with the moon, because it might be, it's loud. It might be give you some insight of how to even tackle the day, since the moon is our most constantly changing the moon is our most constantly changing celestial body that we look at when we look at astrology. So let's talk about her 11th house though, because I want to talk about the onlineness. And I think why I care about the idea or topic of where could we find chronically online energy in our chart or offline energy is I've been a very online person since the internet was invented. I've always loved LiveJournal, MySpace, Zanga, all those things. If you know Zanga, holler. I was shampoo girl because I worked as a shampoo girl and would just blog my feelings. And, now I'm here doing a Substack and have always done podcasting and radio stuff. And, some people do have more of a knack to, be a tech person and get online and share and connect and to comment back and forth and talk to strangers and safely, of course, for, for anyone listening. And the 11th house being that place where we can find those online communities. For Charli, this house is mainly ruled by Aries, right? She's got these wide houses and actually this intercepted 6th and 12th, which we can talk about in a second. But this house is ruled by, the cusp ruler is Aries. And so that's going to put this Gemini Mars at the driver's seat of the 11th house. Now, this Mars is unaspected too, so it's really out on its own. And it's Mars in the 12th house in an intercepted house. Now, I think the 12th house doesn't get as strong of a shout out as it should to the connection to media and the screen. I know there's some, but oftentimes when we think about the 12th house, it's this really doom and gloom, oh, it's hospitals and tragedies and the subconscious and kind of in between spaces. And I think what's a better in between space than the computer screen? When we have planets in the 12th house, there might be a really knack for working in art, especially art that is screen related, photography, making movies, being a poster, being an online a keyboard warrior. And I mean, God, there's no sign that's more of a keyboard warrior than Gemini Mars. I think Gemini Mars might be the most chronically online placement. It's a top contender. Of course, there can be um, many contributing factors, but I think especially for Charli, since her place of, let's call this the internet house, right? We're calling it, naming it. So mote it be her, the ruler of her internet house is this drive, this driving planet, this impulse, an impulsive sign, Gemini, that is ruler of communication technology and sharing. Now, on top of that, that Virgo moon is also a Mercury ruled sign with Virgo. And it's getting squared quite, a 10 square from the nodes, which also can feel like, this is such a message for Charli to really not sweat the small stuff and the small details, even though I think it makes for great songwriting. But it's because it's all kind of coming part of this larger vision of her day-to-day existence. So while I think a really simple read sometimes might be like, oh, are there planets in the 11th house? You should be a poster. It's like, well, who's in charge of this 11th house? And when you have a Gemini Mars in this 12th house place, kind of like of ethereal, not necessarily in real life realms, I think that lends so well. And Charli's not too. She's not just only online. She is in the club. She's a girl. She's DJ party girl. She is out in the nightlife. And so I think too, even though planets below the horizon can be more internal, there is also this like being in the world sort of thing, like being on the ground. Like this is very out and social and seen, of course, and can be public spaces, but there's something here too, since this is so neighborhood and community. It's like finding your local DJs and finding your local clubs and pubs and places that you really want to be amongst the people and the ravers that you love. I mean, and Charli too, she famously, got discovered on MySpace, posting, I think since like, I don't know if she got discovered in 2008 or started posting in 2008, but has just always been online. She also, has made music on Instagram Live with her fans. Like it's like it was in her documentary. Oh my gosh, what is the name of the documentary? It's gonna kill me. Let me look it up. Okay, the documentary is Alone Together, and that was when she was making the album How I'm Feeling Now. Oop, I went over to Lorde. We're back at Charli. We'll get to Lorde because I think where they overlap and where they contrast is just fascinating. That was actually the first time I like fell in love with Charli, was watching that doc. My sweet friend Debbie, shout out to Scorpio Debbie, got me into Charli. And I'm not an OG, late to the party, happy to be here, but got in with that doc. And then this was like pre-Crash. Then when Crash came out, dived with Crash, and then listening backwards. And I love How I'm Feeling Now. I think it's great, and I think the documentary is a really good intro to just Charli. If it's like where to start with this new, even though she's not, if you've been around, she's not new, pop sensation. And that documentary was about her in COVID lockdown, making her album in like 40 days, I think. And part of her process, is why I brought it up, is that she would post, start making beats, and they show this in the documentary. And then she'd ask her fans, like, I'm thinking of doing this lyric or that lyric here. What do you think? And she would use it and take their thing. I always wondered how that worked with like copywriting and, music rights, but I'm guessing the angels are just like, it's yours, Charli. We've collaborated. Enjoy. Maybe there's like some social media rule. Me with my Saturn Capricorn, like, what was the rule on that? Which I think is also really sweet with this like Neptune Uranus conjunction in the 7th house of, partnerships, relationships, other people, these contracts, things. And it kind of is like a bending of the rules that we see with this trademark of the generation as well. I think also when we have Pluto in the 5th house, there is always, I think the misunderstood thing about online people, and I feel this way about myself, is that they're posting every single thing. And I think, yes, there's some people that do that, but a lot of posters are sharing what they want you to know about them. And I think that this, Charli's constantly making and constantly doing, and of course we do get to see many parts of that, but she's not just going to give every single thing away. And I think that that's that reminder with Venus too of when to check in and pull in. There's like such square off energy from Saturn and Venus, kind of with Pluto, of like this monitoring, or this, like, there's strategy to it. It's not just like willy nilly sharing. Like, she is telling a story in this very public way, and there's also like support from that Neptune kind of relationship as well, that we might be. Yeah, I think there's a lot of collabby things that we're not always going to be savvy to. I know I've seen interviews with Charli too, where they like ask her about her astrology, and she's very like, kind of, who cares? Kind of like, what does it mean? Kind of like, she's definitely not an astrology girl. I think she's self admitted in like Q&A Instagram story things, which I also think is just very funny, because I think the top two signs that are like, oh yeah, prove it, can often be Leo and Scorpio. So Charli and Lorde. I do not know what Lorde's feelings on astrology are. If you do know or have any pull codes, again, sound off in the comments. Also, if you spot anything in their charts, if you spot anything in their natal charts that you think screams being chronically online, being chronically offline, shout it out. If you have any like fact on, I don't know, anything related to Charli, Lorde, or the astrology of being chronically online or not, sound up in the comments. I'd love to hear your views, because astrology is huge, and there's always going to be little things that slip in and out in terms of what we can kind of look at as signifiers of certain traits. I'm going to get to Lorde in a second, but just another thing in terms of maybe communication and expressing and being online is, I think too, when there's, back to Mercury, which is a natural place we look for expression and communication, when we have someone with a natal Mercury retrograde, or when I have a client in readings with a, natally Mercury retrograde, I think that they can be such gifted writers and such gifted poets and stuff, which is funny because she's kind of like clocking the poetry of Lorde, even though Charli is an artist and poet, of course, and like a hyper pop artist princess. But that's so funny. Well, I mean, it comes back to the jealousy thing. I think Charli does have the want to be that really sincere poet, but she does it in a very fun, playful art pop, hello Gaga, art pop sort of way. And besides the conjunction with her sun, her place of, ego and solar, speaking of Lorde, solar power, and where, the sun represents our life's mission, on top of healing this, Chiron pain that might be there as well, whether it's from her early childhood or from past lives, if you believe in that stuff, which, I think Chiron can really represent like early wounds, or like wounds we weren't even around for. But the only aspect that's being made to this Mercury is this opposition with Saturn. And so I think of oppositions, since the planets are as far away as they can be, they're not even aware of each other, right? It's like two coworkers who know of each other's existence, but they just never see each other. It's like, oh, I saw that you folded shirts, but I work the night shift and you work the day shift, and we never met, and never the two shall meet. But when we have Saturn as far away as it can be, so it's not saying, it's not a square that's saying don't, and it's not a trine that's saying yes. It's saying do you, boo. And I think since it's in this ninth house place of higher ideas and philosophy, and where we kind of have like big expansive ideas, and not to say Charli doesn't have that, but I think that there is this maybe disconnection of, being really like, having it be important to her to be really real and down to earth and relatable, and not like this sort of lofty, like, I don't see Charli ever really embracing like the woo or the wellness, because it just maybe feels like telling too much of what someone should do. And I think she's just going to, do what feels right for her, and not like, it's very anti, like, Charli's not giving anyone any prescriptions, right? Like, oh, you should live your life like this, or like, this is what to aspire to. She's like, I'm a mess. I want to get pregnant, but I also want to do coke. And I can't tell which one's more important at this point in time, which is also very relatable. I think it'll be interesting to see as she, grows in her career, and, as women hit different ages and stages of life, maybe there is this calling, to, maybe it's like expanding in terms of type of music, or in types of like, international influence too, maybe like different types of instruments, or she's past her most recent Saturn return since we had Saturn Aquarius in 2020 to 2023. Oh, that's so interesting. So she was making that Alone Together documentary during that. Oh, interesting. And it was like this jail of philosophy. That's so okay. Astrology. It's because it's like being home. I think Charli seems to not have a problem. Like, in that doc, she had a problem being home, but it was because she was being told to. And it was also, not to spoil it, but it was like the first time she was like living with her partner ever. I think because of touring and being out all the time, she was, she had like not spent more than 12 consecutive days with her then and on and off boyfriend of like a long, like years. It's very interesting. Even though there is so much beckoning Charli to have that really like solidified home and neighborhood space. And I think she has it with the clubs, but there is this, reminder, and maybe one day, more check-ins of what it's like to have a more, prioritizing that balanced home life. I think too, with her career sector, having her midheaven at the 0 degrees Pisces. So we're going to put both Jupiter and Neptune, in the conversation here. But let's talk about Jupiter. Is, even though I just mentioned about like, solidifying that home life and, really prioritizing that like sanctuary privateness, Jupiter is an expander and wants to share, and Virgo is the details and minutia, and the moon is that like sensitive space. They're not in conjunction, but they're in, conjunct by sign. And if we think about what the 10th house is bringing out, it is that private world of Charli and all the like tiny, mundane, shitty little details that she wants to share. So it's just like there's this really natural flow in her chart of there's like big forces of like big themes of why to share. And it's in this way that it's like, it feels like very therapeutic for someone like her. I don't think it's like not as much about like being seen as her, but her ideas. It's very rooted in that mercurial energy, right? In terms of her Gemini, Mars, 12 in the 12th house, ruler of her 11th, speaking really loudly. And I just want you guys to get so much of me and my music. And of course, she's very visually part of it, but it is really about her also just sharing the process. Okay, I want to talk about, let's get into Lorde, because I think like what just made me LOL so hard when I first pulled up their charts after hearing Girl So Confusing and thinking about, oh my gosh, like Charli and Lorde. Charli's feeling like this way about how Lorde makes her feel insecure. Oh, it's so interesting. Like Charli's very performative and open online. Like, I don't know if performative is the word. She does. Like, she is there to show herself and be out and have her catchphrases and like gay rights and poppers and all the things. And Lorde is very internal and private and has gone offline. Like initially was online, but is famously been offline, I think, for maybe 5 years now. And the first thing that was just such a like, whoa, comparison was, we have Charli with her Cancer rising chart. And then when we go to Lorde, we have the opposite. So we have a Capricorn rising. So we already have these inverted versions of each other, right? Because Cancer is the sign of the moon, its sister sign, its opposite sign is Capricorn with Saturn. And then here with Lorde with this Capricorn rising and Cancer descendant. So and that was just such a it's like that rising flip of like, oh, we should like each other. Oh, this should be so easy. Oh, we should align. But then even just like the foundation of what things in life they may care about and how they approach it are already just sort of we do things differently. Like we do these things very differently, and it doesn't mean it's bad. And sometimes, with opposition and partners, whether that's in your sun signs or rising signs or moon signs or whatever, insert opposition here, that can really show, if worked together, this understanding, like, oh, I always say, like, what it's like the what's that meme? The like quiet boyfriend with loud, we didn't order this girlfriend. It's like, yeah, and when you have two really brash, loud people, sometimes it can be too much. And, I think oftentimes in astrology, we see compatibility being like, oh, if you're both water signs, if you're both fire signs, but sometimes that can be a lot of the same thing. So, again, I think anyone can be compatible, but it's just really interesting that these two, if this song is allegedly about Lorde, how it's like, I like you, but we different. I want to look at the lyrics one more time. Okay, I can't believe AZ Lyrics is still a functioning website. This was the spot for me in high school to look up what the hell the people I liked were saying. Like, what is Modest Mouse saying? So we have the Charli XCX lyrics, girl so confusing sometimes to be a girl. Yeah, so we heard that part. I don't know if you want to, maybe you just, yeah, I don't know if you like me. Sometimes I think you might hate me. Sometimes I think I might hate you. Maybe you just want to be me. You always say, let's go out. So we go eat at a restaurant. Sometimes it feels a bit awkward because we don't have much in common. People will say we're like, because we have the same. We talk about making music, but I don't know if it's honest. Can't tell if you want to see me falling over and failing, and you can't tell what you're feeling. I think I know how you feel, girl. It's confusing. You're writing poems. I'm throwing parties. Throw your hands up, as we talked about. I think we're totally different, but opposites do attract. Maybe we're so meant to be, just you and me. See, that's not a diss. It's like when you want it to work with someone, right? Because people say we're like, have the same hair. One day we might make some music. The internet would go crazy. You might still, whoa. Okay, I'm going to talk about their synastry chart too at the end because I have some ideas. If they did make music together, I have some ideas because there is some collab things that are really loud. And not necessarily like easy. They're loud. Okay, you see me fall on my face. How it feels to be a girl, man. I'm just a girl. Yeah, damn. So that's quite literal about that. Like, maybe we like each other. Maybe the opposites attract. Oh, let me just show you the synastry chart for my free people before we get into the paywall section, just so you can see what we'll end up looking at. Okay, so I pulled up the synastry chart. I'm going to get to this after I go over Lorde's chart a little bit more. She's the Sun Mercury conjunction like Charli. Okay, well, I'll get into it in a second. This is my Mercury's in Gemini. When I get excited to talk about something, I literally freeze because it's like I have too many tabs open in my mind and then I crash. So I'm about to crash. Charli XCX song. But after Lorde, we'll take a look at the synastry chart. But I just want to show anyone who's listening before the paywall so you can get an idea of what we're looking at. I hope you join us over there and talk about Lorde and talk about the synastry chart. But we can look at their charts laid over each other. So we have Charli in this inner wheel and Lorde in this outer wheel. And I'm sorry, spoiler alert. They both have 2 degrees apart Virgo moons. Come on. It's just so wild. Oh my gosh. Lorde's Sun up on her Pluto. Okay, hang on. I'll save that for the synastry chart, but I just wanted to show you guys the visuals for anyone who's watching before we go into the second half of the episode. And so, yeah, we'll talk about Lorde now and get into their synastry. And let's talk about why Lorde is chronically offline.